To today's episode of Zoo School Live. My name is Elisa and I'm an educator here at the zoo. Before we meet our animal friends for today, I'm going to show you guys a couple of cool things that were made in the past week, okay? So first up, we have this wonderful drawing of Oliver the Velveteen Lop Rabbit. This was made by Hannah, age 6, from Wynwood, Pennsylvania. And her brother Max, who's 7.5, they watch Zoo School Live every day. That's awesome. Thank you guys so much for always tuning in. I love, in particular, Oliver's floppy ears, right? Because those ears are super long. That was great. Awesome job, Hannah. Next, I want to show you something that Maisie made yesterday. So she tuned in to see Junebug, the African pygmy hedgehog. And she made our hedgehog craft, and look, she's got her hedgehog shirt on, which is phenomenal. Thanks so much, Maisie. And then lastly, I wanted to let Michael know. Michael, if you're watching, you asked yesterday how many spikes or spines were on Junebug the hedgehog, and I didn't know the answer, so I had to look it up. See, we're learning everything together, right? So they can have between 5,000 and 7,000 spikes covering their body. So that's a lot, but not nearly as much as a North American porcupine, like Pokey, right? So porcupines have between 4 to 6 times more quills than African pygmy hedgehogs have spikes or spines. All right, guys, we're gonna go ahead and meet our animal friends. We have our Chuckwalla lizards. I'm gonna put a salad in here for them to munch on if they so choose. And remember, our theme for this week is locomotion. So here we have Mojave, who's looking at the camera. Mojave is our boy Chuckwalla lizard. And Sonora is this one hanging out in the back. We're just gonna turn her around so she can say hi to all you guys. Sonora is our girl Chuckwalla lizard. And she displayed there a little bit of the behavior that we're going to be talking about, and that is crawling and climbing. So these guys, I have a feeling they're not going to move around a lot, but we'll see what happens. However, they are very, very speedy. So these guys are native to the deserts of the southwestern parts of the United States, along with Mexico. That's actually what they're named after, is the Mojave and Sonoran deserts. So these guys are native to North America, where we are from, right? So these guys are very, very, very fast in the wild and here in the zoo. So that's why we have them in this very, very tall, large and long bin, so that they don't accidentally escape, because they're also pretty tiny. So these guys are both 11 years old. We're not sure of their exact birth date, but they were born in 2009. And I put that salad in there, so they are herbivores. These guys only eat plant material, so they love their salads. They're only ever going to eat bugs occasionally, but they don't get any bugs here at the zoo. So quite different from our insectivore Junebug from yesterday, right? Who primarily ate all of those bugs, especially mealworms. These guys also are really, really good at retaining water, right? There's not a lot of water in the desert, so they need to get their water from the plant material that they eat. So these guys can go quite a while without eating water, and they actually also have these like salt deposits in there that they release from their nose, so they kind of like spit out of their nostrils, and it's salt that comes out, so they dispel or get rid of that excess salt from their bodies and retain more water. So their enclosure that we clean is full of salt snot rockets all over their glass that we have to clean all the time. But that's a way that they are able to hold in that water in order to survive. These guys are a diurnal species, so they are active in the daytime like us humans and sleep at night. They are very territorial, so that means that they protect a section or an area of land that is theirs, and they're territorial primarily for getting those girl lizards to like them. So Speaking of which, Mojave being our male lizard, he's also the darker one, so that's called sexual dimorphism, when the females look different from the males. So Mojave is about twice Sonora's size, and he's also much darker than she is, and that's of all chuckwallas in the wild as well. These guys do a really interesting behavior in order to impress the lady friends. So the male chuckwallas in the wild will actually do push-ups, right? That's an interesting type of locomotive behavior for an animal. These guys do push-ups, and the male chuckwalla that does the most number of push-ups with the best form wins the lady chuckwalla. Looks like Sonora is finally realizing she has a yummy salad in there. So we have some bananas, apples, and some lettuce that she can munch on while we're talking about them. So Mojave won Sonora's heart by doing all of those push-ups in the best form. So that's an interesting locomotive behavior that they have. These guys, if you look at their legs, they're splayed sideways, and that helps them to crawl very, very quickly. And the reason why we have sand in our little exhibit here is because that's primarily what they're walking on in the wild. This is also what they have in their enclosure that they live in here at Elmwood Park Zoo. So they have that sand. It's really good for their feet. And it also helps them to move quickly. So again, these guys are very, very fast lizards. And the other thing, if you guys can see, is that they're really flat. And that helps them to hide. So they're gonna be going into crevices of rocks if they see a predator. They have what's called a third eye, which isn't like the two eyes that they have on their faces. It's actually an quote unquote eye on the top of their head that helps to detect shadows. So the top predators of these lizards in the wild are going to be things like hawks and kestrels from up above. So if a hawk or a kestrel is going to be flying over their heads, they're going to see that shadow and they're going to scurry very, very quickly under the rocks. So they have those sideways legs to scurry really quickly on the sand and those flat bodies in order to hide in between rock crevices. There also are predators that are ground dwelling that would prey upon chuckwallas, so things like coyotes and rattlesnakes. But birds of prey definitely like to eat these guys as a nice meal. They're not very large. They can get to be, the males, about 16 inches long. And if you see, their tail is half the length of their body. So that's really, really long. Sonora is obviously much shorter than Mojave in length and height. And these are a species of lizard that can drop their tail if they are being preyed upon by a predator, and it will regrow. However, again, just like when we learned about, aw, she gave him a kiss. Just when we learned about, and then she stepped on his head. When we learned about Sydney, the blue-tongued skink, how he can regrow his tail, it can grow back. However, it doesn't look nearly as pretty as the original tail, and it doesn't grow back nearly as long. And they can only do that once, right? That's a very, very energy rich thing to do. It wastes a lot of energy in order to do that. So they're only going to do that if they absolutely have to, if it's a very, very big threat. So I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and start asking questions, I believe. All right. So Liam and Ronan want to know if they love to hide. That's a really good question, Liam and Ronan. So these guys really are quite accustomed to humans. Again, like most of our animals here, they're not the biggest fans of being held. However, they're not hiding right now, which shows us that they are comfortable being around us. However, chuckwallas in the wild, if they're not on rocks sunbathing, right, when we talked about reptiles before, how they're ectotherms, they're cold-blooded, they need an outside heat source in order to become warm themselves. So if they're not sunbathing on top of rocks, they're definitely going to be hiding in between those rocks. So I would say the wild chuckwallas enjoy hiding more so than Sonora and Mojave, who we have here. And Liam and Ronan also wanted to ask if they eat meat or just plants. They really just eat plants. So they get a variety of fruits and veggies here at the zoo with different supplements to make sure that they are getting all of the nutrients and vitamins and minerals that they need. But some of their favorites are apple and grapes. And they also really like shredded carrot and shredded yam. Those are some of their favorite fruits and veggies. Ellie would like to know how long their tail is. So if we say that Mojave is 14 inches long, so let's say that he's just over a foot, his tail is going to be half of that length. So it would be 7 inches. That's a really long tail. And what does it feel like? Great question, Ellie. So these guys feel completely different than Sydney, the blue-tongued skink, which is that other lizard that we met a couple weeks ago, right? So Sydney, it feels much more like a snake where it's very smooth scales. These guys feel much more similar to Hoggle, the hognose snake that we met a while ago. And it's interesting, right? Both of those guys live in areas where there's sand and sandy dirt. And those really, really rough scales help them to maneuver in the different types of substrate in their environment. Michael would like to know if they grow back their tails. So yes, Michael, they can grow back their tails if they do happen to drop it if they're being chased by a predator. But again, they can only do that once, and that tail that grows back is not nearly as pretty as the original tail. Katie would like to know, does their skin shed? Yes, Katie, I'm sure you noticed Mojave is currently shedding, right? He's got some old skin that's hanging off under the underside of his chin. So we will give these guys some warm baths. We have to make sure that it's nice and shallow, right? Because they're not very tall, they're very flat, so we don't want them to struggle in the water. But we give them nice warm baths, or we gently spray them with warm water. It's definitely not their favorite, so we only do it if necessary. The other thing that we do when our animals are having trouble shedding is we'll stick various objects that are very rough in their enclosures. So hides that have rough bark, or fake plants that are textured so that our animals can rub up against them, and that helps them to naturally get that shed off. Keith and Ava would like to know if Mojave and Sonora are siblings. They are not siblings. They are boyfriend and girlfriend. Good question, Keith and Ava. And do they ever fight? You know, these guys are probably one of my favorite, and I'm going to say this lightly, quote unquote, coupled animals, where they actually do spend quite a lot of time together, even though in the wild they're a solitary species. So these guys, basically every time that they nap, which is frequently throughout the day and at night, they will actually cuddle together. Sometimes Mojave will have his arm around Sonora, or Sonora will lay on top of Mojave's back, and that's how she'll sleep. So he keeps her nice and warm. He's a very good boyfriend. Zachary would like to know when their birthday is. Unfortunately, Zachary, we don't have an exact date of their birth, so I can't give you their exact birthday, but I can tell you that they are about 11 years old. Ben would like to know how similar the salamander is to a chuckwalla lizard. Oh, Ben, that is such a fantastic question. So, salamanders are actually not in the same order as these lizards. So lizards are reptiles and they're covered in scales, where actually salamanders are amphibians, and they're more closely related to frogs and toads. So they're actually not quite similar at all, even though their bodies look pretty similar, right? They're actually pretty different. Megan would like to know, why are Mojave and Sonora here at the zoo? So these guys were actually, they came from a private donation. So they were donated by an individual, and that's how they ended up here at Elmwood Park Zoo. Sam would like to know, how many eggs do they lay? Oh, Sam, you know what? I don't know the answer to that question, but I'm going to have to look it up and get back to you on that, okay? Jameson would like to know how long they grow. So they can get to be about 16 inches long. These guys here, Mojave and Sonora, aren't as big as the lizards in the wild, but they're still pretty decently sized. So I would say, about 1.5 feet that they can get to be, Jameson. That's a great question. How much food do they eat? So they actually get a really decent amount of lettuce, or salad rather. They get fed almost every day. They have, I think, a fasting day once or twice in the week, but other than that, they get fed pretty much every day. And they each get 40 grams of salad. So they get 80 grams total of that lettuce, fruits, and vegetables. Lucia would like to know, can they be pets? So you know what? Unfortunately, these guys are often taken out of the wild. I'm sure that they would be a relatively, not high maintenance pet, but we don't want to be taking animals out of the wild, right? So I would say the best place for these guys to be, if they are in human care, would be at a facility like the zoo that they're in, or being left in the wild. And Shane would like to know if they can camouflage. Absolutely, Shane. So they come in a variety of these tans and browns and blacks and grays. You can even see that Sonora's tail is actually kind of striped. It has a lighter section and then a darker section. And she's got a pattern on her back that's also pretty striped as well. So that speckling and spotting and stripes actually helps them to blend in with the various textured and colored substrates and environment that they're in. So the sand, the dirt, the bark, the rocks, and things like that. Great question, Shane. Nicole would like to know, can they swim? So these guys are a desert dwelling animal, so they really don't come into contact with water often unless it's to drink. So swimming is definitely not their favorite. They're much better at crawling and climbing. Which actually goes into Laurelyn's question, which is, do they like to climb? They really do like to climb. They climb on each other. They climb on rocks. They climb on sticks and twigs and bark. So yes, they definitely like to climb, and that helps them to get exercise in the wild. The wild chuckwallas are going to be climbing either to get up onto a higher rock that's closer to the sun to get nice and warm, or they're climbing down to go hide in rock crevices to get away from predators. Judah would like to know, how do they hear? They hear pretty okay, Judah. So we're actually kind of going as close as we can to Sonora's head, and the holes that are on the sides of her head, and same with Mojave, those holes are their ears. So we have lots of what's called cartilage around our ears. It's the same type of squishy stuff that's around our nose. It doesn't really do much of anything, right? So they don't need that cartilage. They just have those holes that are on the side of their head. So their hearing is pretty decent. Not amazing, but pretty decent. Jennifer would like to know, do they run away from animals like predators? They absolutely do. These guys, although they're not moving at all right now, trust me, they are speedy. They're very, very fast, so they're going to sprint as fast as they can to get away from predators, absolutely. Caroline would like to know, do they get enrichment or toys? They do get enrichment or toys. Their favorite types of enrichment are actually things that you can see in this exhibit here, are different types of natural enrichment. So sticks, logs, hides, rocks, pebbles. They like to hide in boxes very similar to hoggle, the hognose snake. So I would say boxes and natural type of material would be their favorite types of enrichment. Brittany would like to know if they have had any babies. Great question, Brittany. Nope, they have not had any babies. They have not. Ian would like to know why they're flat. Great question, Ian. That's to help them to survive. So these guys are flat so that they can more easily scooch under rock crevices, right? So if they're running away from a predator, the thing that they're gonna have to do is find some place to hide. So they're really flat so that they don't get stuck when they're trying to hide in between a couple of rocks. That is why they're flat. Great question, Ian. Melissa would like to know if they have forked tongues. Oh, what a great question, Melissa, because we've met a couple of lizards that have forked tongues, right? We met, or rather animals. So we met Tango, the tegu, who has a forked tongue. We also met Hoggle, who has a forked tongue. And what are those guys eating that's different than what these guys, these chuckwallas, are eating? Those guys are either omnivores or carnivores, right? They're eating meat, so they're using that tongue in order to smell, whereas these chuckwallas aren't going to be sniffing out animals to eat, so their tongues are not forked. Their tongues look very similar to our tongues, and maybe we can see Sonora's tongue while she's eating. It's a pink tongue, looks pretty similar to the tongue that we have. So no, they do not have forked tongues. Great question, Melissa. Taylor would like to know how long we have had them. We have had them, I believe, for about 9 to 10 years. So since they were very, very young, we've had them quite a while. Reagan would like to know, does it hurt when they drop their tails? You know what, Reagan? I'm not 100% sure, but I would think that, yeah, it probably doesn't feel the greatest, right? Because they're dropping a piece off of their body. So that's probably not the best feeling sensation, right? So luckily these guys, they don't have any predators since they live in the zoo here. So luckily I don't think that they're gonna have any reason to drop their tails. Look at her displaying that climbing behavior. Good job, Sonora. Mojave, you wanna follow suit and climb some stuff, or are you just gonna sit there? You're just gonna sit there, okay. All right. I think we have a couple more questions, so we have 4 more. All right, Jackson would like to know, how sharp are their teeth? So great question, Jackson. They do have tiny, sharp teeth, and that helps them to break apart pieces of fruits and vegetables. Their mouths aren't very large, and they're a smaller animal, so they're probably not going to do too much damage to a person, but they do have sharp teeth. They're not going to be using those to protect themselves. However, their main defense is really to run away. That's what they're going to do. Nico would like to know if they have any other colors. So there's different species of chuckwalla that come in a variety of colors, but mostly they're going to be these more dull colors to help them to blend in with their surroundings. So tan, gray, black, brown, colors like that to help them blend in with the ground and rocks and dirt. Marabella would like to know, do they soak in or slurp up water to drink? Really good question, Marabella. So these guys are going to be slurping up their water. And again, they really don't need all that much. So we give them a big pan of water just in case they feel like they want to soak themselves to help them shed. They really only take little tiny sips of water. In the wild, these guys get most of their water from the plants that they eat. And their bodies are much better at holding that water or retaining that water than humans are. I think the last question we're going to ask right now is, a lot of people are asking what predators the chuckwallas have. So in the wild, chuckwallas are going to be preyed upon by birds of prey such as hawks and kestrels, and then other ground-dwelling predators that might prey upon chuckwallas in the southwestern desert of the United States would be maybe some coyotes and rattlesnakes. Oh, okay. All right, guys, I think that's all the questions we have time for right now. I will get back to, I think it was Michael who asked us how many eggs they lay. I'll let you know as soon as I find out, all right? If you guys would like to help the zoo in any way, you're always welcome to donate to our emergency fund, which can be found on our website. We'd be so appreciative. And other than that, you can make sure to check out the related activity that we will post in a comment once our live stream is over, so that you guys can show us all of your wonderful reptile information that you learned today, okay? All right, thanks guys for tuning in, and we hope to see you all tomorrow.